Emma, where are you?
Hi, good morning, Naim. I know it's afternoon in Dubai. I'm at the wonderful Conrad St. James in London, and it's a beautiful morning, about 21 degrees, fluffy white clouds, sunshine's got its hat on, and I've had a beautiful long walk on the embankment ahead of a very busy day with the EMEA F&B team here in London. So, yeah, great.
Sounds interesting. You want to stop teasing me now, or shall we continue our chat? I mean, really, I'm in Dubai. It's 50 degrees. But you know what? We are blessed to be here from a climate. Really, you know what's happening. Business sentiments are amazing. I think overall expert feel is really starting to kick in. And my excitement is there's so many good stories. Really, for us to have the announcement of 50 best last week, I'm extremely excited that finally we are on the map.
Oh, the world's 50 best, brilliant news. Congratulations, Abu Dhabi. Congratulations to our colleague, Claudia Burrito, for being part of the advisory board for World's 50 Best. Very exciting. And I've been having little chit chats with DTCM and also our DTC colleagues in Abu Dhabi. And I think there's much more on the horizon around gastronomy and culinary, and how it plays into our strategic visions in the region around tourism. So very exciting for the food and beverage sector in the region. And I'm going to be returning to Dubai in a couple of weeks after some holiday and business trip in Europe and the UK. So looking forward to the return. But I know my team is super busy preparing all our activations for the September launch of the season again, and very much looking forward to Expo and welcoming all the visitors to the great city of Dubai and the region of UAE. Really exciting times ahead. I agree with you.
Look, it is exciting, and I think everyone's been so locked down for the last 2 years. I think the mindset is really kind of tired. Everyone's ready to say, let's move on, let's re-engage in life as we know it best, and really spend a bit of money, put some fun into lives, get some economical growth, and last but not least, let's make sure we put light where it deserves to be. And I think the region, Dubai in particular, with Expo coming up, I think we have so many amazing stories that we need to be head down and focus on what's ahead of us. Tell me, you said you're coming back in a couple of weeks. How has the last 18 months? Obviously, we're all trying to look forward, but there is damage. There is a trail of damage that we're trying to kind of put to bed. We're trying to say, okay, it's done and dusted, even though it's not done and dusted. We're trying to recover, but there is a lot of damage. How did you go in the last 18 months?
Well, I think the last 18 months has been, an incredibly, let's not sugarcoat it, anybody will say, anybody in hospitality and tourism, and indeed lots of other sectors and, economic sectors, this has probably been the toughest, most brutal, demanding, both personally and professional time that any of us, people younger than you and I, people older than you and I that are currently in their professional career have ever gone through. I mean, it's been absolutely brutal. It's pulled on every string as leaders in the industry we've had. Never before has it been EQ been so important, empathetic, clear leadership, but empathetic leadership, showing that as leaders, you're also vulnerable and human. So I think one of the biggest learnings was, leaders and companies with a strong culture, really, and a culture that, we had a lot of support and engagement with their team members, really could pull on that through one of the most difficult times. And I think one of the key learnings was, very much about teams pulling together and leadership, showing both strong directional leadership, but also a real empathetic human side of it, was incredibly important during that time. But I mean, I think there's a lot of key learnings, around the commercials, around some of the challenges, some of the innovations. So I think, for me, one of the first things was strong leadership and, we'll never forget, God rest his soul, Arne Sorensen, an absolute icon in the hospitality, travel and tourism, and how he, right at the beginning of the pandemic, really showed that human side of the impact that the pandemic was having on our industry. Chris Nassetta from Hilton going to the White House to meet the president to talk about the impact. That was the type of leadership we enjoyed in the hospitality sector. Strong directional leadership going right to the top, and also the human side of it. And I think we saw lots of that in lots of companies across the food and beverage and hospitality sector. What else would you say was a learning, Naim?
Honestly, for me, more than the learning, I think a couple of things that really stood out were clarity. I think people needed clarity. Not that we had a lot of answers. This is the first time ever in my career where I turned around to some of my team members and I said, look, at the minute, I don't have answers. All we can do is navigate through this as a team. So clarity was important. And then the culture definition. What is culture? As you rightly mentioned, I think was very crucial for us to say culturally, we're not focusing on AI. I think EI was the key, emotional intelligence, for making sure that we pull together. Because we were all together. There was no difference at any level where you were. We were all heading into a dark hole, basically. We didn't know where we were going. We didn't know how deep it was or how long it was. And the culture had to be playing a very strong role here, making sure that the entire team comes together, and communication had to be very strong as well. And communication didn't stop internally. We had to also take brand extensions and go out to the marketplace and saying, look, we may well be shut, but we haven't shut shop. We are just on the sideline. We're busy getting ready for whenever we can relaunch. So brand extension for us was extremely important. We went online and we did some amazing stuff online. We had the Gates Hospitality School, we had quizzes, we had murder mysteries, and you may ask me, how did you make money out of this? This was never about any commercials. This was about brand recognition, brand extension. We wanted to make sure that everybody knew that we stand by them, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we kept that engagement factor. As you rightly said, I think that there were so many learnings, commercially, culturally, and last but not least, that community feel. I think finally the communities around us have actually come around and really started looking at our businesses saying, we actually really appreciate what you do. We maybe have taken you for granted previously. You're just there and we consumed and we used your venues and we've spent money with you, but now all of a sudden they look at you and saying, we know what you've been through. We know the challenges you've had to overcome to stay open. And again, touch wood, all my 10 venues in Dubai, we haven't closed any of them. We've had tough times. It's not about being easy, but we did navigate through and came out at the tail end.
Well, I was going to say, it's interesting you talk about community and brand extension and marketing into the community. I mean, here in Hilton in EMEA, we have, 577 hotels in 69 countries. So, if ever, there were, and it was, how do you do that kind of local community thing from a corporate team? So, but our general managers in their properties, we had amazing, like Hilton Hyundai setting up water pumps and hygiene stations outside their hotel. We had the Hilton Metropole in London working with open kitchens, making hot meals. So we had so many fabulous, CSR initiatives from a property level. From a corporate F&B level, we really looked at, never before. Once we kind of came through the lockdown, and during lockdown, like yourself, we did a lot of digital extension to colleagues and to our customer base through, for example, our social media account, Taste of Hilton. It grew during the lockdown. We did lots of live sessions with our mixologists and chefs and baristas because it allowed us to engage with them. We saw the human side of everybody doing shows from home, but it was great for the colleagues. It was great for us to share and see each other live on Instagram. But also we did a lot of, reaching out to our customers, like you said, to say, hey, we may be closed because of the lockdown, but we're still here and we're going to come back bigger and stronger. But so we kind of did that as well, but on maybe a more global scale. And then some of the things, I think exactly like you said, it was very much, we had to start innovating because we've never been in this position, Naim. We're used to opening businesses, you know, it's very difficult, especially in F&B, because we're so passionate about businesses. You know, we're very, very adverse to closing a business. We go to the bitter end, and sometimes, you know, we have to look at the numbers. But this was an incredible time, as in, you know, we just had to shut shop so quickly. As you can imagine, hotels are really big businesses to shut, and, you know, you could never really shut them. They had to stay with a skeleton staff for health and safety reasons in those big properties. But first of all, you know, safety and security of our colleagues, number one priority. Number two priority, safety and security of any guests that were in hotels at any one time. But, you know, to that point, we started to do things. And remember, you know, we're a global company. So, you know, we really dug deep to start really working in a gritty manner, in an entrepreneurial manner that you guys would be very used to day to day, you know, rolling up our sleeves and putting our, you know, even through the lockdown, our shoulder to the grindstone, coming up with initiatives such as, you know, we knew that when we came out, we started to see that people were not traveling because of restrictions and safety and security. And so we had to rely on a local market in our respective markets, very much like you do in Dubai. So we had to look at things like what's going to be attractive to the local community. So marketing specifically. So for the first time ever, we used our award-winning Hilton Honors that's got 100 million members globally, but we actually used Hilton Honors instead of just being a sort of a book, travel and stay program, loyalty program. We put it into food and beverage for the first time ever. You know, and we did a trial in the UAE. The UAE was the country that was chosen. It was incredibly successful. After 6 months, we've extended it for another 6 months, and we've actually increased it into Netherlands and Germany. We're now looking at the results there, and it may extend further. So that is a big change that came out of it. We introduced things like our OTB, which is actually out of the box, where we actually said, look, you know, consumers are looking for this trendy, you know, healthy or cost or value product. So we started to have our out of the box campaign. So we had our out of the box burgers, tacos, Asian, and these are really, really good, cost effective, you know, great bundling deals in hotels. We looked at all sorts of, you know, campaigns. And as we've come into the recovery in Europe, which was a little bit behind the Middle East, as we know, we've come out with our New Dawn Rising, which is our, you know, pink, feel good, enjoy the recovery, spring, summer in Europe, you know, the Mediterranean, the Costa del Sol, this lovely pink feel. So,
where is your pink outfit?
Oh, well, you know, I
really was.
After 6, I have been wearing a lot of pink to support New Dawn Rising, but after 6 weeks on the road, believe you may, I'm starting to get a little bit weary of travel luggage. But hey ho, yeah. So, but to New Dawn Rising, you know, that's gone across the whole of Europe and UK and into Turkey, and then, you know, and it's been really well received. We've got customers and guests actually booking events, wanting that whole pink feel for their event under the New Dawn Rising campaign. So it's been actually it's been a lovely story to share on social and for the team members to have fun around the pink products and in their properties, but also it's actually had quite a good commercial side to it. So I think, you know, and let's just talk about the other innovation, the obvious. I mean, you know, we know that safety and security has been number one, and we've all had to deal with local legislation and all the various protocols in our different markets, and Dubai leading the way on the recovery and very clear protocols on how hospitality could come back safely. But let me ask you, Naim, the other one, innovation, technology. I mean, you know, we've always known technology was growing in importance, but let's just chat a little bit about the impact that the pandemic had on technology in the business.
A very good point, and I think technology has really evolved. I think it's one of those topics that have escalated very quickly. Before I start talking about technology, I want to make a couple of points based on your comments, Emma. I think if our priorities changed, at least mine in the last 18 months. My business priorities had to change. Humanity had to be at the peak. The whole, I'm calling it the Maslow hierarchy, had to be tipped upside down and say, what is important for survival? It wasn't about business anymore. It was about community, about survival. That's one. Two is going back to closing hotels and large businesses, reality is we don't even have keys for hotels. There was no, we can't lock. So basic fundamentals forced us to think out of the ordinary. And last but not least, a lot of our teams, a lot of our hotels, a lot of our F&B guys are used to manuals. Every time we have an issue, we refer to a manual. What has happened in the last 18 months? There's no manual. So, and hence we had no answers to many questions. No one's been there, which made life very, very challenging. Going back to technology, look, I think technology, what has happened for me, if you ask me, it was always coming. But I think the pandemic has accelerated the arrival of many facets of technology. For me personally, as I'm sure you recall me saying many occasions on many stages, is technology and F&B. It's a very delicate line, because F&B, hospitality, tourism, travel, technology should always be a backbone. It's a service that we should be supporting the business, but you can't replace the human factor in our business. And I think this is the biggest challenge: is how do we adapt technology, and how do we empower the training of our people and making sure that they continue on excelling from a service recovery, from a service extension, from being human, just that connectivity, that engagement factor. So whilst, you know, I'm loving the QR codes and all of that, it's like when the Spalvins came to the bottle of wine. I loved the cork. I thought there was a bit of romance pulling a cork out of a bottle of wine. And I'm feeling the same with these QR codes. It's so automated. I want people to actually get off their screens and talk. I want someone to come to my side table and say, let me take care of the evening for you, rather than, can I take your order? I don't want an order. Yeah. I want someone to orchestrate an evening and say, try this, because the fisherman this afternoon. I want that whole engagement. And IT, technology scares me to a certain extent, because we don't know where to stop.
Okay, I was going to say, I'm going to come back on a couple of points there. First of all, on the manuals, you know, to the point where I said we're so used to opening, not closing. Absolutely. And, you know, during the initial part of the pandemic, apart from, you know, strong leadership to your team and getting people through this difficult time, you're right. You know, we actually on the hoof during the lockdown created, you know, Clean Stay, which has been, you know, a key program, a great program that customers have really responded to, and owners and properties that have got us through the recovery. But, you know, that had to start somewhere. And, you know, my team was writing all the F&B protocols and the rooms division, you know, and there was a whole team, and myself and some of my team members were on the EMEA Clean Stay Globe, you know, representing for the clean. So we actually created that whole program for Hilton during the pandemic. So you're right, it was about writing SOPs and manuals for reopening a whole load of hotels after having closed them. I mean, closing them was actually harder than opening them. And so you're right. And then in terms of technology, I agree with you. You know, one of the things that I think I went on record quite a few times during the pandemic was, you know, I was like, you know, when people were like, oh, is this the end of restaurants? You know, is this the end of the buffet? Is this the end of, you know, people dining out? Is it all going to be in room, you know, in at home dining? Because obviously we saw the shelves emptying of flour and bakery products. Everybody became bakers in their own home, didn't they? Everybody became great cooks. Because what we used to do.
Don't forget the toilet rolls. Toilet rolls were out as well.
Yeah, exactly. Apart from Reef making cake toilet rolls, which was incredibly innovative and successful from him. But, you know, we were all baking and cooking at home because we were all locked at home. We all still had to eat. We all had more time at home. You know, we weren't commuting and traveling as much. So there was that. But, you know, I always said on record, look, hospitality and food and beverage and restaurants, I am sorry, you know, technology can be in the background. Technology can help drive those businesses, but ultimately, and you know, we go back to Naim Maadad and you know his talk on hospitality versus service. You know, F&B restaurants, it's about an experience, and we know how important experiences is becoming both in travel and food and beverage. You know, and people are looking for that magic connection. They're looking for that soul, and be that in a Michelin star restaurant or just having that great interaction with somebody while you go and get your morning coffee in your local coffee shop. You know, if you're served by somebody that just has that, you know, that 30-second interaction with you. How are you today? You know, we've got this new product in, or, you know, just somebody, you know, just doesn't matter if it's a fine dining meal or just that quick QSR connection, the magic and soul of hospitality. And I always said, that point of impact between two humans, be it it's the person serving the guest, is never going to go away, and it's going to come back stronger. And we've seen the recovery in the industry where people are craving travel. People want to travel again when it's safe to do so. And we've seen that in different markets, and we're seeing people return. You know, I'm here in London. You cannot get a table for love nor money. I am reaching out to every industry owner I know, and CEO and entrepreneur and chef I know, to get tables while I'm here. It is booming. Dubai, yeah, exactly. People are coming out. Dubai, similarly, before I left, I know, you know, it was the malls, the coffee shop. I mean, all the typical breakfast places that we all enjoy, all super busy. We had a great early, you know, late spring, early season in Hilton in the GCC. You know, I mean, so people are coming back. So you're absolutely right. And then in terms of technology, I think to the point, I think, you know, the pandemic has escalated the importance of technology, you know, around waste management systems, kitchen management systems, digital technology, connection to booking tools, you know, labor modeling technology. You're absolutely right, but you know, it's not, we don't want a robot coming to a table. I know we've had gimmicky places do it and stuff like that, but ultimately I think technology used correctly is you know, is going to help the industry. And I agree with you. I think the QR codes have had a great place during the pandemic. Were a great solution, and they're good in kind of like maybe you're more branded or you're more cookie cutter. But yeah, you're absolutely right. If you're going to a beautiful restaurant, you know, that has a sustainability story or has a chef story, you know, has a history, has a brand narrative, you want to touch and feel that paper on the menu. You want to feel that parchment. You want to see the chef's story. You want to see the chef's signature. You want to see the signature dishes. You want to understand why the chef's pairing wines with things. You want to understand what the catch of the day is and why. And the menu, just touching, you know, I mean, you've been there like me. When you're selecting a menu for a restaurant, you're not just picking you're picking the leather, the quality, the parchment. You know, we're now talking about recycled paper because it tells a story. So I think I'm with you, and I know, you know, Food Diva in the region, she absolutely, you know, I've had dinner with her several times, and she's like, I know, I just want to touch the menu and feel and hear the story from the restaurant and from the heart and soul of the restaurant, because the menu tells you the story, doesn't it? So I'm there with you on QR codes. I think they've got their place in maybe a more fast transactional, but when you're actually sitting and wanting to be able to entertain and have that experience, I think they have their place. And I think while we're talking about sort of learnings, I mean, what do you see as kind of, maybe you can give me one or two and I'll give you one or two of the big trends that are coming out, the mega trends now.
Look, trends will continue. I think trends that we have witnessed in the last 12 months are all based on the pandemic. And again, the QR codes and so forth. I'm against all of those. I'm looking at trends based on consumers' habits and needs rather than anything else. So for me, looking at the marketplace, I think authenticity continues on being the leader, right? I think the biggest challenge we have in the Middle East, at least in this region, continues to be the service component and the training. Again, let's not kid ourselves. Most of the guys who execute the service philosophy for us here on the local ground they haven't done this back. They haven't been to educational Lausanne's or the hotel school or Cordon Bleu. So they're coming to principally send money home. But whose fault is that? It's not theirs. It's our fault to empower them and put them in front of a table and give them little training, little ammunition, so to speak, in order to go and fight a battle. Trends for me, like I said, authenticity and making sure that you stick to whatever the brand says. Don't follow trends. Don't try and copy what your neighbor is doing or what is happening elsewhere that is proving successful on social media. I think for me, a trend is understanding the brand, sticking to it, making sure it's relevant to the market, relevant to the world we're living in, from a value representation, from a affordability, from a service, from a timing. And in this part of the world, it's 50 degrees outside today. So don't give me outside restaurants. Don't give me what's happening elsewhere in the world. Doesn't necessarily work here. So we need to keep it real. And that's, for me, that's what drives trends.
Sorry, sorry, go on, Naim. Sorry.
That's where I'm at as far as trends, Emma.
Yeah. Well, I kind of like agree with you there and what you said about, you know, don't rush after the trends, and you're talking about brands. I mean, I think that plays into one of the biggest mega trends, both from a commercial and a personal perspective, is branding and personal authenticity. You know, I think personal branding is important, but also being authentic to yourself. And, you know, if you look at big global you look at companies now, and, you know, Hilton, one of the things they always ask in their pulse surveys with employees is do you feel you can bring your authentic self to work? People want the true version. And I think it's the same in F&B brands. If, you know, if people, you know, want to go to, let's just name Zuma. We know what Zuma is. You know, it's a big global brand in the food and beverage sector. People know that, and Zuma's not going to start running here and there. You know, Zuma is Zuma. And similarly, you know, we've got a lot of restaurants in Hilton. You've got a lot of restaurants in Gates, where, you know, Bistro des Arts is not going to start doing sushi. You know, it's just not going to happen because sushi's trendy. You know, it's an authentic French restaurant, you know, mid upper scale, and that's what it is, and it always will be. It does what it says on the tin, and that's why customers come back. So I think that's really important I think it plays to that trend of authentic, experiential, keep it real, keep it within your brand guardrails of your concept, and be true to your concept. Don't try and do everything. And I think those restaurants that go into that middle ground, and bars, and flay around and grab at this and grab at that because they see it, because they think it's going to bring in more revenue, just completely confuse themselves, dilute themselves, and they go into that no man's land, and then they get lost, and then it's just a downward spiral. But in terms of, you know, I think in terms of the pandemic, people are like, oh, what are the big global trends that have come out of the pandemic? I always say, I believe the pandemic just reinforced and escalated and accelerated the already existing trends. You know, sustainability was hugely important before to consumers and to F&B operators, you know, and the fact that we saw the fragility of the globe, you know, through the pandemic, we saw the fragility of supply chain. You know, we started to see our reliance on agriculture, agri-tech, and local, and how important it was to support local, so that when borders start shutting down and shipping stops and air freight stops, you've got a food supply chain. So, you know, it was important before. I think it's more important now. It just escalated it. Similarly, health was important before. We saw the rise in low and no from alcohol, vegan, flexitarian, reducitarian, you know, low sugar, allergens, different diets. That was important before. We've gone through a global health pandemic. It's come out even more important. So it's kind of accelerated it. So, you know, and technology was important before, it became more important. So, you know, I think what the pandemic played into was
Can I talk for a second? I want to ask you a question. What happened in the midst of the pandemic? When we talk, in all honesty, and I'm using myself as an example, what happened to sustainability? What happened to plastic straws? What happens to containers? All the packaging stuff. Everything went down the gurgler, sadly.
Yeah.
Our priorities had to change, but now we're shifting back. And again, I think it's going back to our lack of manuals and lack of supply. And I think the learning there, and the reason I'm bringing this up is there's been a massive learning for me, is we did not know where to go. We didn't have resources. If you take food securities, moving forward, I think what's happening on the local territories here now with the amount of investments going from the government, the funds that are coming out from government to support food securities moving forward in the region is incredible. And I think the learning there for me is very clear, very powerful. And we should somehow try and nurture that within our own organizations to say, whenever panic happens, we shouldn't just resume to what we know best. We should actually slow down a bit and say, let's not introduce plastic again. It's been a no-no. We've worked years to say no more to plastic. And then overnight, it was readily everywhere in most of my venues, at least. So the mindset, sadly, was we didn't know how to react.
Well, I kind of agree with you, and I kind of slightly disagree with you, because we were in a global pandemic, and all of a sudden, you know, we had protocols and legislation put on us, you know, around mask wearing, and obviously no single serving and portioning and using plastic, and that kind of was it had to happen. And you're absolutely right. And you know me, I was right at the front in 2017 when I joined Ian Ahern, and we had the no plastic, and I did that big campaign in the UAE, and everybody got behind it, and we moved on. So for me personally, you can imagine I was quite struggling with what happened and the use of reliance on single-use plastic, but I also understood and supported the requirements for PE and how we had to comply. And it was number one, that safety and security of colleagues and guests, and comply with local legislation and protocols. And that was for all of us in any market. It just was, that was it, because otherwise you were not, you get shut down or you get fined. And plus it was irresponsible not to. So, but when I referred to our Clean Stay program before, and I was part of that global team. And when we were talking about when we started to open up, and obviously we had the normal crockery and cutlery and flatware that you can use but wash at very high commercial temperatures. But we also had that some guests were requesting the disposal, okay, and we had to supply that for guests. Ultimately, you had to go with what your guests were demanding. To your point on, you follow the consumer and you follow the consumer trends. But I actually, with my team, we actually put a stake in the ground and said that product that we're supplying in all our hotels, that single use, has to be as environmentally friendly and biodegradable. And that actually was built into our temporary Clean Stay brand standards, that if we went down that single use, we had to work with our supply chain to make it. And there was a watershed moment there. We could have just said, right, just whatever, but we actually challenged ourselves as a team and said, if we have to offer that. So I do think, even though we were at the edge on, for example, you mentioned the single-use plastic, I think there was still, from a food and beverage perspective, we never lost sight of our travel with purpose and our 2030 goals, and we've come back big and hard on that, around sustainability and local. And you're right, you touched on local and the food supply chain. And as you know, one of the things we've done in Hilton, if I was to talk about our own business, is we're a big player in the market, and we have, and you will know, we've signed with Fresh on Table, which is a local farm aggregator, because it's very difficult for me to ask the executive chefs or the head chefs or the chef de cuisines in all the hotels, go and source all these little suppliers and bring them through a big. So we've gone to somebody who aggregates all the local farms, gets a local and it allows our chefs to buy straight from farm, but through a consolidated and safe and due diligence supply chain. And I actually think this is the way forward for big organizations such as ourselves, to lead by example and say, look, we are supporting local. And actually, some people will be sitting there going, oh, she's talking rubbish because it's much more expensive to buy local. Actually, if you look into it, some of it is actually as competitive in price. And the reality is the more of us that buy local, the volumes improve, the better the farmers do, and the better deal we can do. And I would say that some of the stuff that's coming out of Fresh on Table, the fish is sashimi grade. It's fabulous. And I think the UAE, because we're very much talking about that region specifically, Naim. I remember at one time, when we said local, we kind of said capsicums, didn't we, and a few hydroponic lettuces. Tomatoes. But the range of products now is incredible. We had an open day, and I went, and do you know what? I'm not joking. The tomatoes taste like they've seen the sunlight. The product tastes great. And, we know that shipping in product from other markets, sometimes those tomatoes, and I'm not going to name those markets, have not seen the sunlight because they're all grown in hydroponic or greenhouses in these markets that are mass producing. So,
no comments. Listen, my challenge with the topic is, unfortunately, that there are multiple hurdles. One hurdle is your approach by the financial control, the food cost, the beverage cost, and the traditional way we think, right? Two, the discussion that we are having today, it's not the norm. It's driven by Emma Banks. It's driven by Naim Maadad. It's not the norm, because unfortunately, a lot of the guys in the marketplace today are looking at a P&L and saying that's how the food is determined. That's how much you sell a bottle of wine. That's how much. So how do we help the mind shift from traditional into local, into seasonal, into forget the margins, still make money, but make sure you deliver quality. And last but not least, if it wasn't for you and I, a few others around, there would be no push. There would be no support for the locals. So how do we get that to become the norm? How do we challenge our chefs, our restaurant GMs and so forth, F&B directors, to say, we will only support local. We will only make sure that we get behind our brands, our colleagues, our farmers, and get that whole movement happening, because it's heartbreaking to see how much food is being wasted.
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, you're right. But I also think, I'm very fortunate that, when I joined Hilton, I go back to 2017 when I was involved with plastic. When I joined Hilton in 2019, I did my due diligence and I really, really engaged with Hilton and their CSR and their travel with purpose goals. And, that's very much about, as a global organization, halving our environmental impact and doubling our social impact. So, and I looked at all that and I looked at where F&B dovetails into that, and I was very comfortable with that, because at the end of the day, when I'm out there with my team, who are all fabulous F&B professionals, and we are talking about waste management systems and inputting our food waste into our our Lightstay, which is our environmental measuring tool system on property, and we're talking about buying local, and we're talking about seasonality with our chefs, and we're talking to our suppliers and our supply chain colleagues about this. We are supported by a global framework under Hilton with Travel with Purpose. So it comes from the top. So I'm very fortunate in that. But you're absolutely right, and the pandemic has highlighted commercial prudence is required through the recovery. But I think ultimately, to answer your question on percentages and margins and stuff like that, it's very much about how we continue to walk the walk, lead by example, continue to highlight talent and success, and show that ultimately it's about customer footfall, it's about revenue, it's about volume, and it's about you bank cash margin. And if you give the consumers what they want and they come back and they bring their friends and family back, and actually your sales grow, even though your percentages might have squeezed a bit because you've bought local, or you've invested a little bit more in seasonality, or you've invested in a better quality of protein or something, but but the consumers are responding well. I think we just have to continue to absolutely lead by example. But I genuinely, I do feel that it's massively turning. But we all continue to need to walk the walk and talk the talk, so to speak.
Agreed. Look, massive work to be done ahead, and I think the pandemic did actually slow us down. But in all honesty, I think the pandemic helped us actually focus and say what is important, what is it we running every day, and what is a purpose, definition of a purpose of our industry, our businesses, our brands, and the sustainability of the businesses. Before we start, I want to talk about Expo for a second.
I'll just touch on that point, and then I think we need to go on to
Expo.
Yeah, just on that point, the pandemic, there was, some people referred to, as difficult as it was, and it was really difficult personally and professionally for us all. We know that, and our families and being apart, and there was so much about this pandemic, and we're still, going through it. Our children in school and unis, and I mean, it's just still going on. But there was that saying, wasn't it? Don't waste a crisis. And we actually, it made you take a really hard look at your business. And actually, from a food and beverage perspective, we didn't waste the crisis, because when the recovery started and we started opening and people weren't traveling, and I go back to that local and that community and that marketing, customers were coming to the restaurants and bars in the hotels, and all of a sudden, because the rooms weren't filling, and we're now starting to see fabulous recovery in some markets, Russia, the GCC, parts of Europe, the UK with the staycation market. People are staying in hotels again, but at the initial, we kind of like, as my team, we kind of saw it as our in, and we really worked with, and the importance of food and beverage really shot up, because that's where the revenues were coming from. And I was kind of like taking the opportunity to say, don't forget about me, your business partner, rooms people, I'm here, and look, my bars and restaurants are...
We make a difference. We add value, we help positioning.
And owners have really engaged with some of the innovation we've done, the businesses engaged, and actually, to that point, the reason I'm here in the Conrad St James in London is during the pandemic, our owners supported us. Just before the pandemic, we didn't know we were going to, but we've done a huge food and beverage master plan here. We've repositioned the 4 F&B spaces in the property, completely rebranded them, gone back to the original building brand narrative, which is so rich in history in Westminster, brought it all out. We've brought Sally Abbey in as our consultant chef, full female team, because actually this building has a lot to do with the suffragette movement and the meeting here. So we pulled into that true, authentic story that you can only do in fabulous historic cities like London and amazing buildings like this. But we have invested, and similarly, if you look at, I've just come from Edinburgh, as you may have seen from my Instagram. Not that I've got lots of followers, but I was in Edinburgh, and I was at the iconic Waldorf Astoria, Caledonian, and we had a restaurant, a beautiful restaurant, but it wasn't open, and we worked with the hotel, and we brought in Dean Banks, who's one of the most up and coming chefs in the United Kingdom, but local to...
Nothing to do with his surname by any chance, is it?
No, a lot of people say that. We probably need to check our family history at some point. But and I was in his restaurant, and people are now, we've done this pop-up with him, and it's so successful. We're now talking 12 months, and we've actually started to talk further. And it's like people are saying this is the best restaurant in Edinburgh now. And I mean, it was amazing, the meal I had. But so I think, to the point, the crisis kind of showed in hotels specifically how important food and beverage is. And there's so much support for me from my leadership around, because they saw kind of the innovation and how important it was, not just for the guests, but also for the team members. Because when they started to see some success and see themselves on Taste of Hilton, and with the fun we've had with the pink campaign and the pink pool parties we've had in Barcelona, and the flavor and flair competition, and making little Instagram stars out of some of our winners and brand ambassadors, for Monkey 47, people are like, actually, it's great. It's engaging. It's fun. It brings customers through the door, and it's helping with this recovery and feel good process. So I think we use the crisis, as horrific as it was, as positively as we could to that point. And now, Naim, and sorry, I know there are strict instructions to reveal some deep dark secrets as well on this call, aren't we?
Not quite. We're not going to go that far. Pandemic articulated the importance of the industry and how it plays a role in positioning lifestyles, community centers, hotels, and how it brings people together. And those, this is my summary at least, and those who actually use the time efficiently, effectively to reposition their brands, to rethink of their purpose, to re-drive authenticity and really push it forward. These are the guys that are out of the gate today and smashing some big numbers, having some amazing success stories, and I think will be around for decades to come.
Absolutely. I think the pandemic is, for hospitality and for food and beverage, it's been called the Great Reset, and we know it's been called the Great Reset. We know the challenges around talent and attraction, and but I think we're working through these challenges in all our markets, and I think we are going to be stronger, more lean, more nimble, more focused. We've lost a lot of the peripheral stuff that really didn't matter. We're all looking laser focused on our commercials, laser focused on our concepts, laser focused on our talent, developing our talent, rewarding and retaining our talent, how we communicate with the consumers, how we market, and actually just stop. So, because we've all got leaner, smaller teams. We've all, we can't, stuff that didn't matter, we stopped doing, and I welcome that. And another thing from a business perspective, somebody who, did a few air miles and, challenged myself about, well, how environmentally friendly is this? We still love to travel, and we're all going to love to travel. And, we're lots of customers and lots of business colleagues traveling. But I think one learning as well is, we're doing this virtually, London, Dubai, is I think we'll become more efficient as business professionals, because we will still want to meet in person, to that magic of the human contact. But we will do that when it's important and when it's necessary and it's going to get the most. But also, we've all found this way of working online that is more efficient. I mean, I'm speaking to people much more, communicating more, not waiting till I see them in 3 months, picking up a Teams call, picking up a Zoom, and I think we're more efficient as individuals and as organizations. I think we'll get more done. And I think, hopefully we found a bit of time back when we would have been traveling and commuting for our family, for looking after ourselves, for the, I know we're all super busy and we always will be in hospitality, but hopefully this new hybrid physical and virtual working can only be for good as well. So I think, and that's not just our industry, that's any industry in general. I just think I'm connecting with so much more people because of how we've learned to connect online.
That's how the world is moving. You're right. Look, I'm getting bored with our discussion because we're agreeing on everything. So let's move on.
No, we're actually going towards the end of our discussion. So before you start arguing, I think we've got one more topic to cover around our favourite something or other, and then we're going to zoom off.
Listen, I would love to ask you a couple of questions, right?
Okay, go on.
The last 29 days, right, I have eaten out every single evening, 29 days in a row. Now, that's not healthy. I'm spending an hour and a half in the morning in the gym trying to offset that. But we all have our little to go to bars and restaurants, and it's some of it is comfort zone, some of it is relevant, some of it is feel good, some of it is food. Where is this little hideout?
Honestly, Naim, this is serious, because you know how many people I'm going to upset.
Well, good at that. Go on.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you quite a long answer. I have a lot of favorites. Generically, I love Asian cuisine and Indian food specifically. So to your point, that's not very helpful on the waistline, is it? But so those are my kind of favorite cuisines. Being brought up in the Far East, I absolutely love spices. So that's my go-to. So when traveling, I love to find, especially if I'm traveling in Asia, I love to find genuine street food. And funny enough, I was only talking to my husband yesterday, and I'm like, I cannot wait to go and visit a friend who's now moved to Hong Kong, because she's now finding all these great, off the beaten track places to go. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to get over and see her and go and visit all these genuine, off the tourist trail places. So there we go. So that's my type of cuisine. I love my favorite places. If I'm to be honest, I've got lots of places in Hilton I love, so I'll touch on them in a minute. But my favorite day part, and I'm typical of lots of Dubai residents, is how we love breakfast in Dubai. We love to eat breakfast out. I think we're quite unusual in the world. That's my favorite and my family's favorite meal, breakfast out. And I would say probably, I can't name one. For breakfast out, we have some go-tos. We love cassette. We love Common Surge. We love Some of Us. We love Vibe. We love. I'm just trying to think of it. It's not been home for a while. But it's those sort of very cool, casual, but with a real health angle. Because my daughter is like super healthy, so it took her 4 weeks to find an acai bowl in Europe, and she found an acai bowl yesterday. And if I've said to a few people and they're like, "What's an acai bowl?" I'm like. It's probably not going to take off in the UK because it's cold, but in Dubai it's great. So breakfast, I love a lot of those breakfast places. But in terms of dining out in Dubai, my favourites probably I like
the drum rolls out. Da-da-da-da-da. Go on.
Name it. I really can't name it. There's so many. There are so many.
Fair enough. Look, I tend to agree. I can't name any, but I think my answer would have been, if I was asked the question, it depends on what the eating out purpose is. Is it food? Because if it's food, then for me there are 3 or 4 venues in Dubai that are outstanding at food. But if it's for entertainment or for drinking or for socializing, it varies. It varies, and I think we haven't.
You have to name a few. I mean, I named a few. Come on, you have to name a few in Dubai. I named some of my favorite breakfast locations.
Look, breakfast for me is very special, and I love my bacon. So for me, Reform is a go-to breakfast place where I can really eat my proper breakfast. Bacon kebab is perfect for me. So simple, right? Equally as important for me, I think, is the cafes, and I think what we're seeing in the cafe society on the Dubai front, some amazing places, really. Along Beach Road, Wassel Road, there's some amazing cafes. Now, if you're lucky enough, you get to try them before they close, but that's another story.
But the ones that I've mentioned have been around a long time, and I go to that point of, giving the consumer what they want. The ones I mentioned have been around a long time and will be around a long time, I think.
I agree with you. I think it's half of the battle is not about the food or the service. Half of the battle is about doing due diligence of the business. Because a lot of these people sign up and they think it's easy and the chef is amazing and they can deliver, but the mechanics of the business, the due diligence of whether it's rent or whether it's setting up the structure of the business doesn't work, so they can't last. And unfortunately, not a lot of people can sustain. Our business is 19 days cash life, right? Anything beyond 19 days, there's no cash in the bank. So that 19-day cycle is very crucial. And a month like August, there is nobody in Dubai today. Honestly, on the road this morning, and I was listening to Dean, Richard Deans this morning, and there is no traffic anywhere. And that tells you that a lot of people are traveling, a lot of people are vacationing, and they'll come back. Of course, schools will kick in September, they'll come back, but a lot of it is due diligence. I would also like to make a special mention to Folly. I think the food in Folly, I'm not blowing my own trumpet here. I think the food in Folly is exceptional. I really do. Now, other venues that are not under my portfolio, I think Mimi Kikuchi is doing some amazing food. I love the food. I love what they're doing. And again, I think people like Reef, people like Izu, these are amazing talent that have done amazing steps forward in the industry and really have gone out of the kitchen and doing F&B businesses. And I respect that.
But I think also, talking of restaurant, another trend, and I'm not going to name some of the people today because we could be on this forever, but I think another trend that really came out from the pandemic, and I know people who've transitioned and into restaurants such as Kukui, is the supper club. The supper club is that niche underground. It's harder than getting the best table in town. It takes you weeks to get a table at one of these supper clubs, and then some of these underground supper clubs are becoming so successful that they're moving into restaurants, and again, difficult to get a table, but very, very interesting. I think I don't say this lightly. On my Instagram the other day, I think I posted Dean Banks' signature menu at the Waldorf Astoria, probably the best food experience I've had in a long, one of the best ever. And I don't say that lightly. However, saying that, I'm in the Conrad St. James. I'm about to join some of my colleagues later this evening for the PEM, Sally's new restaurant. So let's see, I've not dined there yet. I've not had the pleasure. Worked very hard on it remotely with the team, and so let's see how that goes tonight. And that's very much what we're about, creating these new concepts.
I look forward to hearing all about it. I'm well and truly overdue for a trip to London to see what's happening with Red Farm and the likes, but let's see how the travel...
Are they open trading Red Farm now?
Yes, we've
I'm staying in the Waldorf Hilton, which is right near Covent Garden, next week. So what I will do, Naim, is I will stick my head in and say hello from you to the team there.
Please do.
I will, and I'll send you a photo. I promise. I'll try and track that, because I am staying near Covent Garden, and when I've been in Covent Garden before, I've walked past them. So, and I've got some interesting.
Don't walk past. Go in and have some amazing tucker.
Well, because honestly, to your point, I'm eating out a lot, and I've to the point, London is so busy that I've been booking even in our own hotels. You know, I'm the vice president of food and beverage for EMEA, and I had to like talk very sweetly to Peter Alvis, our general manager of Galvin Window on Park Lane, to get a table on Saturday night. I'm like, seriously? But he's going to look after me, and I know I'll have a great experience. But, you know, it's like, it's busy. So people are back out. The hospitality sector is recovering, you know, with the safety protocols in place, as Dubai has transitioned through the various safety protocols. We don't take it for granted, you know, to the point you've always been at the forefront, very much from an independent operator, saying, you know, we're blessed to have recovered so fast in the region, but we must adhere to the recommended protocols. And, you know, Hilton on a global measure has done that in every market. So, you know, we don't take it for granted. We're not out the woods yet, but I think we're seeing people coming back, traveling, people coming back, enjoying food and beverage, and just enjoying the magic and experience of hospitality, and long may it continue. I just had such an interesting time speaking to you, Naim. It's been great. I hope our audience, I hope it's not just an audience of you and I, but anyway, hey ho, it's been a great time to connect with you, and I'll see you when I'm back in Dubai.
Absolutely. Look, if they enjoy our discussion, well and good. If not, I did. Thank you, Emma.
We've always got something to say to each other, and I look forward to AHIC as well, and you know, and all our exciting plans for AHIC that we have at Hilton.
We have so many stories. Really, we have so many stories, so many events, AHIC Expo, and the busy part of the year, the busy part of the season is still all ahead of us. So positive, and the onus is really on people like ourselves to keep the motivation, keep the positivity, and drive forward.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to come back for the season. I'm excited to come back for Expo. I'm excited to come back for the Golden Jubilee celebrations, you know, and I was sharing with my friends on Instagram the other day, you know, I'm like, look at this. We had, you know, the lady from Emirates Airline on the top of Burj Khalifa the other day. Fabulous. You know, we've got the deepest swimming pool in the world for diving. I mean, it just never stops. It's a city that never sleeps. It's so exciting. I love it. And I feel so proud to live there. And when I travel around and share the stories of the UAE and the GCC with my colleagues, you know, it's just lovely. And I look forward to returning to the region and seeing you all soon.
Excellent. Emma, we'll catch up when you're back. We're due for lunch.
Yeah, we are actually. Before you went to Australia, stay safe. Take care. Bye. Nice to see you. Bye. Naim. Bye.
See you.